Hi, I'm Lisa Singer. I am the Senior Editorial Director of Brand Insider at Media Post, and welcome to Brand Insider BTS, where I get to pull back the curtain on some of the most influential women marketers today. And with me is Jessica McCarthy. She is the CEO and founder of Brand Energy Marketing and PR firm. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you, Lisa. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I am too. I love that, I reached out to you on LinkedIn because I always am just checking out everyone's sites and you really impressed me. So I made it a point to reach out to you and I really appreciate you joining and now actually being a part of this. So I love that.
Awesome. Yeah, the digital world we live in is fantastic for getting to meet people that you can just reach out to anybody now and make a great connection. So,
I know. And it's just like as I always say, I do my snooping and I love to read people's feeds and that sort of, I'll still, however they're writing or promoting it will just intrigue me to be like, okay, let me connect. So, and one of the things you wrote that it did intrigue me, and that was recently you said, I'm going to read it so I don't misquote you. Anyone else feel like LinkedIn is giving zombie apocalypse lately? Everyone with insane requests, everyone overworked and exhausted, everyone asking for job contacts, everyone running on adrenaline. So, how do we get the algo to hype the positives? And where did the good news go? Okay, so I want to ask you, I do think, yes, algorithms certainly play a part in what we see on our feeds. But I'm curious, do you think that it also might be indicative to what people are feeling in the industry today?
absolutely. And I think the thing that I struggle with thinking through is what are people feeling versus what is reality? I think that there's always an ability for us to have this apocalyptic feeling about our career or where business is going, where the economy's headed, what's my job going to look like? So I think it's just a matter of that feeling seems to be really pervasive, even on LinkedIn. I think maybe a year or two ago, even if people were feeling that way, maybe they weren't saying it. So I think maybe it's a little bit more about people being willing to talk about the fact that they feel this way on that professional public domain.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it does feel like, contacts of old keep popping up saying, "Hey, do you know anybody hiring?" Or, "Hey, I'd like to get out of this role and move over to that." Or, just people being generally concerned about what's going on. So I don't know the answer about whether it really is a different time or if the digital universe that we have now is allowing us to speak a little bit more personally in the professional networking space.
Yeah, no, and what you said at the top, when we were talking about how we were able to connect, because digitally that is a wonderful thing. That people that you would never meet, see, possibly, you can connect with them
Right.
before you actually meet in real life. But I also think, and again, in one way it's good, maybe people are more open to admitting what's not perfect. I think initially, even when all of digital people, Facebook, it was like, oh, the perfect world. We would just see everyone's perfect life and everything's so good. And it made us all feel horrible about ourselves because it was like maybe our lives weren't so perfect. But it turns out theirs wasn't either. And now people are willing to maybe share that other side. So on that sense, yes, it's positive. But on the other sense, could it be contagious? Could it be that it's just like when someone comes griping, then you ready to gripe and maybe you wouldn't have. So I'm just like, and again, you sort of talked about it, but I just even go a little deeper. Do you think that maybe there shouldn't be too much honesty when it comes to this, or are you like everything's game?
I think the contagion part of the apocalypse is what you hit on that speaks to me. That's what I believe is happening. So I think maybe if you have one professional on LinkedIn who's saying, the world is falling down and, everyone's getting fired and this business is closing and the economy is going to tank. And then you sort of have people commenting on it and then they're creating their own posts that have that same flair because it's on their mind. And I do think that because that's happening, AI and other tools and algorithms are picking up on that. And that's kind of why that feels to me like it's been a bit more of the tone lately than maybe a year or so ago. And I do think that maybe some of it stems from, you know, working conditions post COVID. I think there was a big wave of come back to the office and people being on LinkedIn, specifically talking about that. And it just kind of felt to me like that was the beginning of the griping, right?
Yeah.
Um, and everything is ending and my perfect life as the way that I have it set up, working from my home office and doing this, that, and the other, that I've come to appreciate is coming to an end. And I'm going to, you know, talk about it on LinkedIn. So
Yeah, and I do, and I think negativity can spark more negativity. They even say when you hang around people who are a certain way, it can be contagious. It can make you spark those kind of thoughts. And personally, like I love when I see someone who's positive and it makes me get more inspired. I'm not saying there's some days I just want that negative. I'm not saying, I'm not trying to have this Pollyanna outlook, but I do think positivity can then sort of spark something within us to be like, yes, I can do this too. So
yeah.
I do think that maybe we need to see a little bit more of that, as you said in your post, but not at the expense of being honest and not at the expense of, yes, if you need help, reach out. But I think that maybe there's a more of a balance.
Or more of a lighthearted griping, you know. I think, if you can kind of poke fun at yourself or each other and, talk about, well, this is just reality. And, unfortunately, finances are such that we have to work. We've created our civilization in such a way where, we can't just do whatever we want. So, we're pretty lucky and privileged to be able to do what we do and gripe about it appropriately or in the appropriate settings. So
Right. No job's perfect, and it doesn't matter where you are in your position, what level. There's always going to be something where it's not what you really enjoy doing, but you need to do it to also be able to enjoy all the things you love about it. So I think that's for sure something that maybe that's getting griped about when it's just, hey, suck it up. You got a great job. Let's do it.
that's
I'm
right.
not saying that for everyone. And by any means, like I said, when someone needs help, a leg up, whether they just were laid off, whatever it may be, this is the opportunity to take advantage of. I think that's one of the great things about LinkedIn. But I think that also, yes, there's those everyday mundane chores that we don't like so much. Maybe we don't need to hear about it all the time, or as you said, maybe in a more amusing way. Well, I'm just with this kind of mentality on LinkedIn. What about those just starting out who maybe they aspired to be someone in the industry, be working whether it's on a brand side or agency side like yourself. And this maybe discourages them. They're looking at it and saying, well, ooh, if everyone's that miserable, maybe I don't want to do this. What do you say to them? How would you advise that person starting out?
So I would say don't catch it, right? We were just talking about being contagious with negativity, and I think that generationally, I'm going to sound like an old person, but just having been in a career for 15 or 20 years, you have a different perspective, right? Because you understand so much and you have so much experience. If you're just starting out in your career, you haven't done the dirty work yet, right? You need to dig in. You need to do that in order to be able to learn and to get to that next level. So I think it can be really dangerous for younger people coming onto LinkedIn and seeing sort of seasoned executives maybe feeling a little overwhelmed or overworked or whatever the case may be. And those executives maybe aren't understanding that younger people are seeing this, and the younger people need to be able to get in there, dig in there, maybe be a little stressed out, right? I mean, looking back, if I hadn't, you know, it's busted my hump in my 20s,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be where I am today, right? If I had said, I'm really stressed out, I need a vacation, and I said that all the time in my 20s, if I had taken the vacation, or if I had taken what would be considered a lesser role or an easier role, I don't think you advance to the level that you want to be at later in life. So I do think that there needs to be perspective for a younger person starting out.
Yeah, I mean, excuse me. The fact is, as you said, we have always, or starting out, had to do the grunt work, had to like, in order to do the other. Like, I'm not saying you shouldn't just be allowed that. There should be opportunities. Like, let me get this done, and then then I'll maybe write this, a press release or whatever it may be, to then show that my skills can be better than this or get more opportunities than this. But at the same point, accept that. So telling them again, as you said, if you're seeing people who you aspire to be like, still griping about the things that you're feeling today, so it's like, why bother?
Yes.
That's not the case. So again, that person coming to you, and let's say a young woman coming to you, and she's dealing with not only that kind of maybe negativity and overwhelming work, if she's already maybe in her first job, but then also, not that it's much better for women now today in the industry. We see women in your level much more often, but it's not always easy. It takes a little maneuvering sometimes. So how do you advise her? So let's say okay, if you already told her,
Yeah.
ignore the griping, and then how do you start today to get to the level where you want to become?
So I put on my business experience hat and we talk about your personal brand strategy and where do you want to go and how do you get from here to there effectively and efficiently, right? So what are those things that make a difference in what you're doing? And what are those things that if you truly do have too much to do, that you could put to the side or you could put it down for a little while and then see how you feel about the things that you actually need to learn, understand, and be able to master in order to get to that next level. So, what are those real stepping stones across your journey that are going to get you from here to there? 3-year plan, 5-year plan, all those sort of business things that we don't like to have to sit down and write on a piece of paper. But I do recommend that people write down what their goals are 1 year, 3-year, 5-year, and then a very clear path to what can get you there. And if they are feeling, this burden of the apocalypse that's happening potentially on LinkedIn, what can you remove from your life in order to gain a little bit more time or clarity or reduce stress?
Yeah, and I don't think, like, I think when you ask someone to do that, I don't know if you even asked me to do that, it's like, oh my God, pressure. Okay. I
Yeah.
gotta write the exact thing that I need and I want to do. So I have to, it's like you want to be perfect again. No, like, write it out. Life can change,
Yes.
as the advertising world loves to say, we pivot, like, so it's
Yes.
just, but to not be that it's written in stone, but just to sort of get a plan where you can kind of follow and move forward with. So
That's
speaking of you, you did not seem to start in the traditional way.
no.
It's like it sounds like you were in medical first and a vet assistant and eventually crossed over to marketing where you worked at a number of brands. And then now today you open your own, you started your own in
Yep.
2022, I believe, your own agency and PR firm. Although it crossed over a little bit with your last position as CMO at Care New England, yes. So talk about, let's not go there yet. Let's go back to when you were graduating college and what were you envisioning for yourself? It doesn't sound like marketing was on your radar at that point.
Yes. So way back then, I like to say I have teenage daughters. I say I was born in the 1900s. Um, I graduated in the early 2000s, so it seems like a lifetime ago. But back then, I was pre-med cognitive neuroscience, and I was going to go to medical school, and I was going to be a brain surgeon. Um,
Wow.
but I met and fell in love with someone in the military, and medical school credits don't transfer. And it was during wartime, Iraq and Afghanistan. So the choice was, go live at medical school or get married and see if you can go to medical school in a few years, right?
Mhm.
So the wars continued on, and he stayed in the military, and I stayed with him, and um, you know, that's sort of the veterinary stuff was just medical tangential when we were moving
Mhm.
constantly for the military. And then I got into health information technology systems when we were stationed at a different Army post. And through that, I was at Vanderbilt University Medical Center, and I got my MBA there while working on the business side of the house. That's my dog that we were just talking about. He just jumped into frame.
Mine was digging in the behind me for a while when we were talking. I don't know if people heard, but
So every once in a while, they jump into frame. But yeah, so while I was there, I got my MBA. And when I got my MBA, assuming that I was, going to continue to just put off medical school and put it off, and I felt like I needed to just dive in and do something that I could be great at.
Mhm.
Got my MBA there and got pulled into the business world with Mars and the consumer goods world. So that was really my segue into the business world, and really feel like I use my data and stats and strategy from my days of science in marketing most of the time. Actually, I think that really gives me a leg up in understanding the data and the analytics
Yeah.
I deal with every day in the marketing world.
Yeah, it completely makes sense. I actually had it's fun. You wouldn't think I would say I had a woman that I spoke with, and she what her on her list initially was neurosurgery. And she did similar, and then and so it's but it doesn't seem like it would be a good crossover, let's for lack of a better term, but it turns out because of the analytical side, and which again is more recent, and I mean it's been around for a while, but I'm just saying that was something that you didn't necessarily look at saying you need to have that skill set in order to become a good marketer.
That's right.
But
That's
as the world changed and as digital came about, then it became such an asset.
that's right.
So, well, I think that's amazing. And now you have your own. What prompted you to open your own agency?
So I had been consulting on the side for a while. I just find that I tend to get bored no matter how much, work I have in a role. I like to do other little side projects,
Mhm.
sort of like my hobbies, right? So, I think when you are in a room continually as an in-house person at, let's say, a major healthcare system, you feel sometimes like you're always teaching people the value of marketing, for example, or the value of PR, or how things work or how they don't work, right? You don't put a press release out and it's like you wrote it as an op-ed and it gets published that way. So it just feels sometimes like you are continually explaining your expertise and what you're trying to do. So oftentimes it felt throughout my journey of working in-house at various, large and small, for-profit and nonprofit, people listen to outside firms sometimes more than they do their inside folks. And then you
Mhm.
don't have to deal with some of the inside baseball that happens,
Right.
which I appreciate. So I feel that, being out on my own, with the people that I'm working with now, every minute that I spend working is actually creating value for an organization, for a partner, right? Rather than, internal meetings where maybe I don't feel like I need to be in, right? So I think that was sort of a piece of it. And the other piece is just being able to do really great work. Being able to be bold with marketing campaigns. When we recommend a campaign, we can always have one that's really bold and out there. And if the client doesn't choose it, they don't choose it, and that's okay. But we can at least share that spectrum of opportunities based on what's happening out in the world. So that's really fun for me.
Yeah. It sounds like you like to be in the trenches a little bit.
I
I
do.
mean, not that you don't oversee and not that you have to have, I mean,
Yeah.
any good leader has to, you let's have this person who does this well do this, and this person who does this well do this. But at the
Yep.
same point, you can still get your hands dirty a bit, and maybe more so as that than when you were CMO for. the health company that you were part of. So yeah, that makes sense. I'm curious,
Fun.
have you, going back to the apocalypse, have you ever experienced a zombie apocalypse of your own? And if so, how did you get through it?
It's funny because we're talking about this being really stressed out and, how people are feeling and how they're talking about it. I think any zombie apocalypse that I've experienced has been my own doing in my own mind, right? I think I realize now, in my old age, I realize that there's really nothing that anyone can do to you, or say to you, or ask you to do, or whatever the case may be, that would be worse than what you can do to yourself in your own mind, right?
Mm,
So I
true.
think as long as you can keep yourself optimistic, which for me means having a plan, understanding, even if the plan means we're getting here, but it might be a really squiggly line to get there.
Hmm.
I think the mental apocalypse can happen when you sort of forget what an expert you are. You forget, how much experience you have. You forget about all of this fantastic work that you've done, because sometimes it's easy to judge ourselves really harshly. So I think for me, my zombie apocalypse would be, if I let my own mind lapse into self-doubt, which we all tend to do, I think, once in a while. You can't do that when you're running a business. You have to remind yourself that, you know, some of these things you're better at doing than the vast majority of the population of the whole world. So
Yeah, yeah.
um, there's strength in being able to do that. But, sometimes you lapse and you feel a little apocalyptic in your brain, right?
No, I completely agree. I mean, especially, I mean, I think everyone can, but women especially
Yeah.
tend to doubt themselves. As you said, there's so many things that I probably can do better than
Yep.
anyone else out there, or a lot of people out there.
Yep.
Yet we question ourselves. We sort of say, can I? And I feel like we need to learn to talk to each other to ourselves, the way we talk to each other. If
That's
your
right.
girlfriend came up to you asking, should I do this? Should I take this chance? Am I good enough? What would you say to her?
Right.
Of
Right.
course, you're
Right.
awesome. You got this.
That's
And
right.
we don't say that to ourselves. We need to have that, they always say, I'm not one for this kind of thing, but I think I should be. When you should look in the mirror and give yourself pep talks, tell yourself how awesome you are. And then that will alleviate any of those apocalyptic moments.
That's right. That's right. Maybe I'll learn to do that right along when I learn how to meditate, because I don't know that that's ever on my bingo card.
I I try sometimes, and it's just like the silence, my mind goes a mile a minute. And I know that everyone just says, "Oh, just try it for a minute. Just try it," like,
Yep.
and I am like, I have this time, so I want to do my New York crossword, like whatever. It's just, I think that I actually do want to become that person. I do think it would be good for me. I think I just need to get that mindset, which is the whole purpose of doing it. So it's kind of one of those catch 22. I don't know. But so no, I would like to be one of those. And I'd like to be an early riser. There's a lot of things I would like to be, but those are things for another day.
I believe in you.
Yeah. So, well, what do people get wrong about you when they first meet you? What do they maybe think and it's not exactly accurate?
I think in most situations, first impressions are a really weird thing, right? So it sort of feels like whatever your first impression is, it's probably wrong, right? I think personally, I know you're looking for a direct answer. I think people think I am very much an extrovert. So I am really good. One of my key business qualities is speaking on big stages in front of lots of people. People tell me I'm funny. I never hear this in my personal life. People tell me, I'm a great stage presence, all of these things. So I think that when people see me in that situation, which many people see me for the first time in that situation, they think that I'm an extrovert.
Hmm.
They think that I just would tap dance and I just am the life of the party all the time and I just love, that's just who I am, is this extroverted person. So I think I am actually fairly introverted. I'm an extroverted introvert. So I
Mm.
love doing that for a certain amount of time, but then I'm exhausted. So these large conferences where you go and you speak, and then there's a happy hour, and then there's a dinner, and then there's a bar, and then there's a this. I'm exhausted by
Yeah,
the end of that day. I can't say that I enjoy that. So I think, to just directly answer your question, I think people would think that I'm very much an introvert based on how I perform in a business setting. And I do enjoy doing that in that moment, but then I'm tired. I want to go and sit in a room quietly by
yeah.
myself.
Well, so what I got out of that is so you're not gonna tap dance for me.
No,
No
nope.
tap dancing, okay.
Also
No.
not a good dancer. Yeah.
No, I completely agree. I'm that way as well. Like it's just I can be very outgoing and, doing events, whatever
Yes,
it may be. You kind of always on. And
that's right.
that's a side of you. It's not phony. It is a part of who I am and I'm sure you are, but you then need to decompress. You need to then have your alone time, just
Mhm.
chill and get away from that. And for me at least, if I don't have that, I'm not good at the other. I
Yes.
need that.
Yes, I agree. I need that time or else I become more quiet in that public setting, and then there's almost some disappointment, right? Like you didn't perform your tap
Right.
dance you were supposed to.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. All right, so when you have that time away, what are you obsessed with? What's your guilty pleasure?
My guilty pleasure. So unfortunately, I feel like I am a little obsessed with my phone, but
Hmm.
do that as an answer. Something that I have been doing every day for about a year now that I walk my dog and I stand outside and I actually put my feet in the grass. And it sounds
Really?
strange, but there was a saying, oh, millennial, you're always online. You need to go touch some grass, or you're out of touch with reality. You need to go touch some grass.
Mhm.
I think that's sort of a real thing. I mean, I know they were saying it to, you know, it's just kind of a little saying of,
Yeah.
for yourself or, you need to go take a chill. But I really do feel like just I'm obsessed with being outside in nature, at least for a couple minutes a day.
Where are you located?
Rhode Island.
Okay, so I being from New England, from Boston, and
Yep.
now I'm in New York, but Newport, not Beach. I'm back. I was in California as well. Newport,
Yep.
Rhode Island was a place where you could do that. Really rewind, loved going. Is that one of the go-tos, or is it just, I mean, obviously you're not going to always drive off to somewhere like that, but do you look for water? What, aside from the grass, what are you looking for to really give you that unwinding?
The ocean. It's 100%. You hit the nail on the head. So when we moved around all the time, we were landlocked a lot of the time in the middle of the country, and that was not good for me. So now that we're back here in Rhode Island, I look at the ocean every day. That's something that I make sure to do. And just there's something about it, even if it's just for a minute or two, even if it's cold and rainy,
Yeah,
um, just looking at the ocean, walking on the beach for a couple minutes, even if it's not nice and I just drive by the ocean or drive over the bridge.
yeah,
um, it's
yeah,
my
no, I
that's what
agree.
I'm obsessed with.
I love that. I miss that. That's one thing because I had moved, I'd been in Corona Del Mar for a while, and there's two things about it. One, I miss that. I was right by the water. That was my workout, going along the water. But there were days where I would be like not even taking the time to look, and all
Yeah,
of a sudden I'd be driving home and I'd just like look up and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is my view every day. Yet
yeah,
I'm not even taking that moment to, as you said,
right.
put your feet in the grass or just, I remember when I first moved to LA, someone told me, if you get stressed, look up. So I was not
Yep,
by the beach. I was in LA and all the palm trees, and
yep.
just see that. And so I feel like we don't take those moments. We could have these beautiful things around us all the time, but yet we forget to do that.
That's right. And it shouldn't, your question was, what's your guilty pleasure? I shouldn't have to feel like it's a guilty pleasure to take a minute or two.
Yeah. No,
out however many minutes we have in a day
no.
to look at the ocean or to, be out in nature. So
Well, that's a healthy guilty pleasure. My guilty pleasure is like Milk Duds and a Hallmark movie. So,
I also like that. Don't get me wrong.
so maybe not feeling great about, but not that, no offense to the Hallmark movie, which 'cause I'm a total Hallmark girl, but
Yeah.
maybe not so much of the Milk Duds, or at least not so many. But no, I think that yes, taking that, but that's another thing. I think people working today get so caught up in work and feel guilty when they do take that moment to do whatever it may be, walk your dog or do a crossword or whatever it is that gives you that relaxation for, 20, 30 minutes. And I think when you're done with that, sometimes you feel guilty that, oh, I should have been doing this, or you missed all these emails.
That's right. Try to work to live, not live to work, but it's
Yes.
difficult.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. All right, so going back to your LinkedIn post about the zombies and the apocalypse, and you had said that you wanted people to be good zombies and tell us something good that happened, give us some positive. So be a good zombie. What is something positive most recently that you've seen online in any capacity, whether it's a video on LinkedIn or in what way?
I'm a sucker for dogs.
Yeah,
So
I'm
anything
with
to
you
do,
there.
for me, it's the really stupid things. It's those really stupid viral trends of, what my dog's doing or the different hats my animal is wearing or who started a little farm with, mini donkeys on it. That's the sort of thing online that I think it could be a guilty pleasure to sort of scroll on your phone, but I think it really actually is helpful because it pulls you away and sort of like nature, it sort of makes you realize there's more to life than even on the computer or even on your phone.
Yeah.
There's more to life. There's more to the phone than the emails that you have to answer. It should open us up to a whole world of possibilities of amazing things that we can see and learn about and look at. And some of my relatives and my sisters, they go, all over the world. That's what their passion is, traveling, right?
Mm.
So they post these incredible videos and photos from these places that, you would never see, you would never know to go visit if you didn't have the internet or, all these technologies for traveling and seeing and doing. So I think there's a lot of great stuff online that you can learn about, that you can see, you can meet people, like we would have never met if it weren't for LinkedIn.
Yeah.
There are a lot of
Where
connections.
would your world be then?
I know I wouldn't be here with my fake ocean background talking to people of a real ocean. Um,
Yeah,
but
I agree.
I think there's a lot out there. There's a lot of digital opportunity for good.
Yeah. No, and I think the dog videos would get banned from LinkedIn. That for sure. But I think it also, and when you talk about algorithm, because I do always stop on the dog videos and anything. So my feed on Meta is completely every other thing is something about dogs or the cartoons. I love those cartoons with little captions. Like, so I get a lot of that because that's what I stop on. I also get like food things and, like things, anything you are looking at is what you're going to see.
Right.
So I think that again, it's a mindset to uh, probably not on LinkedIn, but as far as other things, you can find that with a YouTube, a Meta, or wherever you're looking. So I have one last question for you.
Okay.
If you could alter reality and skip to any moment in time, past or future, where would it be and why?
You saved the hardest one for last, I think. It feels like that question, like, who would you have dinner with?
You can answer that if you want. Maybe go back in time and talk to someone.
Skipping around in time. Okay, so I'm going to give you the answer you don't want, which is I would stay right where I am, but I'm going to tell you why.
Okay.
Because I maybe would have said skipping back to my early 20s and to tell myself not to worry so much. right? Because you're going to get somewhere great. But I don't want to do that because I believe, like we were talking about before, if I had done that and in my 20s, I relaxed
Yeah.
and
Then you wouldn't be here.
didn't work super hard and I didn't have all that hustle, I think there would be a different outcome.
Yeah.
So I just believe that I don't want to alter time when I was young. I don't want to go back to when I was younger because I think I would tell myself not to worry. And I don't want to tell myself that because I'm right where I am because of right where I was. And I don't want to go to the future because I don't really want to get any older. And I like where I am.
Yeah.
I like where I am right now. I'm happy. I have a great everything. I'm very grateful. And yeah, I wouldn't
Oh,
go
I love
anywhere.
that answer. So why would you think I wouldn't love that? I think that's great. And I do think it makes sense what you said. I've never really thought of it that way because I do, a lot of times I'll say, what advice will you give to your
Yeah.
younger self? But again, as you said, all of the adversity, scars, worrying, whatever it may be that you went through is what brought you to where you are today. And
Right.
then even going future, like say, let's go see how it ends when you're 70 and what your life looks like. But if it looks pretty bad, then you're like, I don't want to do this. But if it looks awesome, then it's like, as you said, maybe you chill and you don't try as hard. It's maybe you don't want to know so much.
Yep.
So, but you could have gone like 100 years from now and just maybe you're doing the flying cars or whatever they say there will be. Although I think do we have flying cars? I don't know, maybe not.
Well, and wasn't that Back to the Future was supposed to happen last year or something with the hovercraft? And that was
Yes,
what's the date on the Back to the Future movie was recently, I think.
we probably have passed it, which is kind of sad that we're past Back to the Future. But no, I don't think we've achieved everything that.
Mm,
So anyway, but we can always imagine, and that just gives us more to imagine for the future. So, well,
that's
Jessica, thank you so much. It was really great talking with you, and I'm glad you said yes when I reached out on LinkedIn.
awesome, Lisa. Thanks. It's been fun.
Well, and thank you for watching. And please, if you have any fantastic woman you'd love for me to pull the curtain back, please let me know, a woman in marketing, and I will do my best. So thanks for watching. And Jessica, thanks again.
Thanks.